The Koch brothers say that. Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. So which party in the White House would shrink the role of government more? Let's go in focus to find out with Mr. Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, Bill Baldwin, and Bruce Japsen. Mike, is it possible that a Democrat would shrink government more than a Republican?
Certainly not Hillary Clinton, David. Trump would shrink government much more than Hillary ever would. As a successful businessman, Trump knows how onerous regulations are. He knows how onerous high taxes are. Hillary Clinton has never been in private business her entire adult life. She's lived off the public trough her entire adult life. She's clueless.
And Bruce, another thing that Trump does know is that big government pushes out private sector of a lot of things. We saw those GDP figures, those pathetic GDP figures this week, 0.5%. That is almost a recession.
Well, what I do know, Charles Koch is probably like me in the fact that he's taken a look at Trump's website and seen how vague these policy positions are, that they look like they were written in crayon. I mean, let's face it, Trump's policies are so vague. Hillary,
with the exception, with the exception of the tax policies, they're pretty clear. But other policies, I agree, he's being vague.
Okay, well, let's take that tax policy. It would blow a hole through the deficit, and if Hillary was like her husband, she would be a deficit hawk. And Trump wants to not going to touch Medicare. He's not going to touch Social Security. So,
well, Steve, first of all, they said the same about Ronald Reagan, by the way, that his tax policies were all wrong and they led to a huge boom. But in terms of spending, Koch is right. The spending under G.W. Bush was way more than the spending under President Clinton.
There's no question of it, David, which is one reason why we have the mess we have today. Made possible the rise of Barack Obama, including the weakening of the U.S. dollar, gave us the crisis in 2008. So the real question is, you look at Hillary Clinton, she's trying to be right now the Bernie Sanders mini-me. Question is, can she now morph into the Bill Clinton mini-me? And since
it's a tough pivot. That's a very tough pivot.
And since she's an accomplished chameleon, she might do it. And with Donald Trump, he's got to spell out more, not just on taxes, what he wants to do on regulation, what he really wants to do on trade. He's been over on that one. And so he's got to spell it out so people have reassurance that he will do what George W. did not.
Well, Sabrina, another thing that Charles Koch talked about, that we heard about, was regulations. He said regulation reform was better under Clinton than under G.W. Bush. I find it hard to believe. This is a cost of regulations, by the way, $4 trillion over that time period. That's huge. I find it difficult to believe that a guy who's in business, very sensitive to a lot of regulations, wouldn't actually try to cut those regulations more than a woman who's never really known the private sector.
Well, David, I think one challenge for Trump is that we simply don't know exactly what he would do should he make it to the White House. What we do know is what Hillary Clinton would do, and she has an absolute disregard for sort of the growth of the progressive state and for regulations. We know that she was the mouthpiece for the Obama administration on many failed energy and environmental policies that were all wrapped up in terrible regulations. We know that she would raise the minimum wage arbitrarily. We know that she would try to pass a massive paid leave program. This is a horrible regulation that would strangle jobs and dampen economic growth. So we absolutely know that Hillary Clinton would be bad for regulation, bad for growth.
But Bill, don't you just think that a guy who has been dealing with how many regulations does a building guy have to deal with? Just thousands and thousands, would be more sensitive to try to cut down the number of regulations in this country.
Let me tell you what the Trump campaign motto is: make government big again. First of all, he's going to hire 1 million policemen to chase out all the immigrants he doesn't like. And then when he gets through with his world trade war, he's going to have to quadruple the size of all the unemployment insurance offices.
Well, Rich, there is a problem. There is the issue of trade, where Donald Trump does have some issues where a lot of people in business say, my God, even Donald Trump doesn't practice what he's preaching as far as that goes.
Yeah, look, both Clinton and Trump are meddlers by their nation. They're authoritarian by their very personalities. Trump has told Apple, he wants to tell Apple what kind of privacy software they could put in their phones. He's told Ford, the only auto company that didn't take a bailout, where they're going to manufacture. You know, I don't see this libertarian spirit in Trump whatsoever.
But, Mike, you really don't. I hear him talking about Apple and forcing them to come back and manufacture in the U.S., which would probably double the price of an iPhone, so there would be a popular revolt against it. That's it. That's one of those throw-out positions I don't believe. Do you believe that he's going to follow through on that and try to strong-arm Apple back to the United States?
What I think will happen before that day comes, David, is by lowering the corporate tax rate, companies are going to want to stay in the United States. And Donald Trump is a big proponent of lowering U.S. corporate tax rates, and he's not going to have that problem of companies leaving like they are under Obama, because capital will want to stay in the United States.
Bruce, what about the idea of Hillary's kind of gaming with Bernie along the campaign trail, her going much further to the left as far as spending? 'Cause how does she back away from that? Hasn't she kind of painted herself into a corner?
Well, I think one of the things that she's done in this regard is she's said that she would be more incremental. So let's just take Obamacare for it. No, she would.
That was Steve scoffing a little. We'll get to him in a minute, but go ahead, finish your point.
So she would, okay, let's just take Obamacare. We know that aside from the people don't like that they have to buy a care, whatever, there have been Medicare reforms in there that have reduced hospital readmissions and have reduced Medicare spending. Trump says he doesn't want to touch Medicare and he doesn't want to touch Social Security, and he talks about a universal approach. So Hillary, in that respect, would reduce the size of government.
But
so
Steve, how does she kind of wiggle out of this this one-upmanship she was trying to do with Bernie in terms of bigger government spending?
Well, she's going to have to turn herself into a Houdini to pull that one off, because she has spent the whole time trying to be a semi-socialist, and now she's going to try to back off of it. Good luck.
Sabrina, you don't believe, do you, that she'd be more like Bill than Bernie? Because a lot of people say her true colors were coming out in this primary race, where she does seem to be a lot more like Bernie than Bill was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anyone who was sort of around in the 90s when the original health care debate was going on will remember. I mean, she was the real driver of a single-payer health care system. There's no doubt that she would probably double down on Obamacare, despite the fact that 54% of the country disapprove of it right now. She would probably double down on that. She would expand labor regulations. She would not tackle our entitlement problem. She would, I'm sure, also double down on those energy and environmental regulations. She'd be a disaster.
And Bill, she was always focused on this relationship between government and... I misspoke before. I said she never had private sector experience. She did. She was a lawyer for an S&L that went bankrupt, that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to the taxpayer. And then she tried to say that she didn't really work for them, but then, of course, they found the billing record. So her experience in the private sector is one that's uniquely tied into taxpayer support.
Well, I'm not in love with Hillary Clinton either, but I think those Trump fans are delusional if they think that Trump is going to cut your taxes. This is a guy who loves big government.
You don't think he's going to cut taxes?
No, not successfully.
Wow.
Not if he's a lover of big government, crony capitalism, and not if he won't touch entitlements. It's just not going to happen.
Last word from Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
I think anybody who thinks Hillary Clinton, who basically has been just pandering to everybody who wants an entitlement this entire campaign, is going to cut the size of government more than Donald Trump, is delusional.
Okay, that's the last word on that subject. Coming up next, new criminal justice reforms could be coming soon. Well, some here say it could make a crime surge and our economy sink even further. They'll explain. You decide. Coming next.